So hi, in this video we'll be looking at a concept called induced drag. So let's look at this picture. So this picture is we can see that in this picture there is an airplane that is taking off from runway, and we can see that these kinds of vortices are created as the airplane tries to take off. These are visualized using some color powder, and these vortices look beautiful, but they create an extra drag called the induced drag that adds to the load of the engine. So we'll go through how this is produced and why this is a drag first of all, and then we'll go through the quantitative aspects on how to calculate the drag induced drag coefficient and the induced angle, etc. So we can see that this is the picture of an airfoil, and we all know that the airfoil tries to create lift by using the pressure imbalance on the bottom and top surface of the airfoil. So this the bottom surface has a higher pressure and the top surface has a lower pressure. We all know that. And what happens since the wings are finite, the high pressure air underneath the wing, it tries to shortcut by curling around the wingtip and moves to the low pressure region. And this creates these kinds of vortices, and these vortices contribute to drag. So we'll see, and this is another view or another representation of the same kind of vortices. These vortices are called wingtip vortices. They're also called the trailing vortices. These are also called the trailing tip vortices. And also the vortices created along the span of the wing are called bound vortices, but these do not contribute to the drag. So we'll ignore them for now. And we can see that from this figure we can see that there is something depicted as downwash. So downwash is nothing but the extra negative vertical velocity that is produced due to these trailing tip vortices. We can see that these contribute to downward velocities, right? Like this. And also we can observe that these downwash is maximum near the trailing vortices, and as they move towards the center part they reduce, and again they tend to maximize near the trailing vortices. Let's see. So to understand why this kind of a drag is created, there are three approaches. So the first approach is just what we discussed now is due to the downwash, like the downward velocity. So let's look at this figure. This figure is a depiction of an airfoil at an angle of attack alpha, which is the geometric angle of attack that it must see. But what happens is due to the downwash, which is represented by W vertical downward velocity, that downward velocity along with the free stream velocity v infinity creates a net velocity which is in a slightly different direction, and that slightly different direction can be represented as the induced angular attack or alpha I, and hence what happens is this is a slightly exaggerated diagram, but what happens is the net effective angle of attack that the airfoil sees is the geometric angle of attack, which is alpha minus the induced angle of attack. So it sees a lower angle of attack than it must actually see due to the downwards produced. So this has some implications. We'll see that later. And the second approach is let's look at this diagram here. This diagram. So this is a representation of a 3D airfoil, and the airfoil extends into the base. And the blue lines represent the flow of streamlines over the airfoil, and the gray dotted lines represent the flow underneath the airfoil. The flow and the airfoil is truncated at this point. So we can see that the flow beneath the airfoil, which is a high pressure flow, tries to curl around the wingtip, and it moves in the span-wise direction. So there is, apart from the flow direction, the normal flow direction which is over the airfoil, we also get a span-wise component of velocity along the airfoil, and this alters or this disturbs the existing pressure distribution on the airfoil, which is responsible for generating lift, and we'll generally see a lower lift generated, which we can also interpret as due to an extra drag, which is called the induced drag. And the third way of looking at this is these wingtip vortices need extra rotational energy to rotate the air around them. and that extra energy is provided by the engine only, and that is not the actual purpose of engine. So it is an extra power that the engine is delivering, and that is a power loss which is also due to the induced drag. So these are three approaches of looking at how induced drag is produced. So now that we have looked at the qualitative aspects of induced drag, let's move on looking at how do we actually calculate the induced drag. So we'll start with some basics. So here this line represents a vortex element of stem gamma. This is capital gamma, which also represents the circulation. So vortex element is nothing but we can imagine it to be something like a line of charge which we have discussed, which we have studied in our high schools. So these these are all vortex. This is a collection of small point vortices which have singularities at their center, which we have seen in the previous video. Um, Similar to a line of charge which has infinite electric field at their center. So, and that is what we call the point of singularity. So, what we are trying to do is we are trying to calculate the effect of this line filament or this vortex filament at some arbitrary point P, which is at a perpendicular distance r from this vortex filament. So, it is similar. Like we have considered an analogy to line charge. So, the same Biot-Savart's law applies here also. So we can we'll get something like this. dv is the induced velocity due to this vortex filament here, which is given by gamma over 4 pi times the same Biot-Savart's law. It is of the same format. And our assumptions are we are assuming it to be inviscid flow so that the surface forces due to viscosity are zero, and we are assuming it to be incompressible because we are not going into the transonic regime or supersonic regimes. And it's a pretty good approximation at this point of time. So we'll look at a semi-infinite vortex. We'll try to get a closed form solution for a semi-infinite vortex. And the reason we are looking at a semi-infinite vortex is that the initial figure that we looked here, we have trailing vortices like this, and we have a bound vortex like this. And we can see that the trailing vortices are infinite, semi-infinite vortex filaments because they start at this point and they go till infinity. That is the reason why we want to calculate the induced velocity due to the semi-infinite vortex. So this is a diagrammatic representation of a semi-infinite vortex. We make a geometrical construct here. We take this h to be the distance between the starting point of the vortex element and the point at which we want to calculate a velocity, induced velocity, and theta is the angle between the perpendicular distance from the point to the thing. Theta is usually close to 90. It varies from 0 to 90 depending on where the point is located. So we have sine theta equals h by r, which we can readily observe from the figure. And we assume AB to be of length L, where B is the point on which the perpendicular from P to the semi-infinite vortex filament falls. So we can write dl to be minus h by sine square theta d theta. And from Biot-Savart's law, we have this expression. And when I substitute uh, for r to be h by sine theta, and I substitute dl is minus h by sine square theta d theta, I get an expression that goes like this. This 0 to infinity limit changes to pi by 2 to 0 because we have changed it to sine theta. Sine theta runs from 0 to pi by 2. And this is the final result that I get. It is gamma over 4 pi h, where h is the distance between the starting point of the vortex filament to the point at which we are calculating our induced velocity. So now let's consider an airfoil. This is the same diagram that we saw earlier. So this is usually applicable for thin airfoils. I'm assuming my airfoil runs from minus b by 2 to b by 2. The entire span length is b, and I have my bound vortex here, which does not contribute to any drag, and because it cannot create induced velocity along the same line it is operating. So it is only the trailing vortices that are responsible for creating this downward or induced downward velocity. And this kind of representation or this kind of a vortex field is also called horseshoe vortex because this looks like a horseshoe, and this is this is how the downward distribution looks like due to a horseshoe vortex. So we can see that the downwards is minimum at the center point and it's maximum and it's increasing as we move close to the trailing vortex. This is exactly the same diagram that we saw earlier, and this is the coordinate system that we are taking to integrate to find out the downwash. So the downwash expression that we just calculated, this is downwash is entirely due to the induced velocity, and we can say the induced velocity is nothing but w. W is what we call the downwash, and it's varying with respect to y. Y is the coordinate along the spanways direction of the wing, and wy equals minus gamma by 4 pi times b by 2 plus y, and it is the same expression. And when we try to evaluate this expression, this is the final expression that we get for downwash path due to a horseshoe vortex. And we have a few assumptions, or I would call a few principles that we follow here while solving this problem. These are called Helmholtz theorems. So the first thing is we consider the vortex tend to be constant along the length of the filament. So we consider along the entire length of the semi-infinite vortex filament, we consider the circulation cost or the vortex tend to be a constant, which is a reasonable approximation. And the second point is the vortex filament cannot end in a fluid, or it cannot end abruptly. That is why we are taking it till infinity, or it should either form a closed path or it should tend to infinity. So we are taking it to be infinity in our case. And the third is in the absence of any external rotation forces, the flow initially irrotational remains irrotational always. So this is another principle that we use here. So this is how we are going to generalize. So now that we have calculated what is the downwash caused by a horseshoe vortex, to look at it through the entire span of the wing, we need infinite number of horseshoe vortices because the downwash occurs through the entire span of the wing. So we have infinite number of downwash horseshoe vortices, and we have dx. This is dx, which is our vortex element, which I suppose induces a downwards dw at a point y naught. This is the y-axis, and at a point y naught, this dx is inducing downwards of dw, which is at an angle theta with respect to the x-axis, and the distance, the distance between the filament and that point where we are calculating is r. So we apply the same formula, Biot-Savart's law, here to calculate, and we get our dw to be negative of um, the vortex strength gradient times dy by 4 pi times y naught minus y. So the total velocity is the integration of this from minus b by 2 to b by 2 along the entire span of the wing. So this is our integration, and let's keep the integration as it is because we are not sure if tau is a constant or not. We can come to that later. It depends on the circulation. And from we come back to the same figure that we saw earlier. So from here we can say that tan alpha I is nothing but w by v v infinity from this triangle. It is negative because we are taking it in the clockwise direction. Um, so alpha is nothing but tan inverse of minus w by v infinity, and we know that even from the figure it is clearly visible that w is a very small velocity downward, and compared to the free stream velocity v infinity. So we can use the small angle approximation of tan of theta equals theta, and we get alpha is nothing but w by v infinity, and we have calculated what is w as a function of y. So we can write alpha I is nothing but this entire integral divided by v infinity. So this is the induced angle of attack as a function of y. And the next thing is um, we need to calculate the drag coefficient. So before that, we'll quickly go through how lift coefficient is calculated here, and that we'll try to relate that to how we are going to calculate the drag. So consider a very thin airfoil here because we are considering thin airfoil. We can make some approximations. So the lift per unit span, which I call as dl prime, is nothing but the pb minus pt, that is the pressure difference in the lower surface and the upper surface times dx. That dx is a small span-wise element that I am considering to calculate my lift per unit. By Bernoulli's theorem, since I am considering the fluid to be inviscid and incompressible, which was stated earlier, by Bernoulli's theorem, I can write that my PB minus PT is nothing but rho times U infinity. U infinity is the free stream velocity times UT minus UB. UT is the flow velocity over the airfoil, and UB is the flow velocity below the airfoil. and my when I try to integrate my dl prime, I get L prime equals rho times u infinity times closed loop integral of u times dl, and but this is nothing but the circulation. Closed loop integral of u times ds or dl is nothing but the circulation. So we can also say that the lift per unit span is minus rho u infinity times gamma. This is the Kutazow-Kaski theorem, which we saw in the previous video, and we proved it in a different through a different approach, and this is through a different approach. This is an approximate proof, but the proof that we did earlier was a more exact proof, but it gives the same result more or less. And we can see that this also implies Kutta condition by itself, and yeah, we know that um, this is the Kelvin circulation theorem. Yeah, and we know that from our expression for the induced angle of attack, which is 1 by 4 pi v infinity times this being integral, um, we can write our lift coefficient to be a naught times this is also valid for a thin alpha. We can say that my lift coefficient is a naught times the effective angle of attack minus my angle of attack at lift equals zero at zero lift. That means when the airfoil is generating zero lift, what must be the angle of attack? Generally, for symmetric airfoils, it's zero. For cambered airfoils, it's different. It is negative. So for a thin airfoil, A naught turns out to be 2 pi. So we can write CL is 2 pi times alpha effective minus alpha lift 0 at zero lift condition. And from our Kutta-Joukowski theorem, we can write the lift per unit span is rho v gamma, which is also written as half rho v infinity square times the characteristic length times the lift coefficient. And that is how lift coefficient is actually defined. Half rho v infinity square is nothing but the dynamic pressure, Q. And we can write lift coefficient to be 2 times gamma over v infinity times c, which is 2 pi alpha effective minus alpha at zero lift, which we just got here. And comparing these two expressions, we get my our alpha effective to be gamma by pi times v infinity c plus alpha at zero lift. And we already have our induced angle of attack to be 1 by 4 pi v infinity times this integral. So from this we can say that our net uh, net angle of attack or the geometric angle of attack is nothing but the sum of effective angle of attack and the induced angle of attack gives this net angle of attack, or also called the geometric angle of attack, which I write in terms of these integrals to be gamma over pi v infinity times c plus the angle of attack at zero lift plus this integral, which is due to the induced angle of attack. So this is a general expression that is valid for incompressible linear flows over a thin airfoil, and this is also called the fundamental equation of Prandtl's lifting length theory. From here we can say that um, the total lift generated is nothing but integral of the span wise lift along the entire span minus b by 2 to b by 2. We can say it is rho v infinity times from our Kutta-Joukowski equation. We can say it is rho v infinity, rho v this integral of gamma along the span wise direction. The lift coefficient is nothing but lift by dynamic pressure times s, and dynamic pressure is nothing but half rho v square. And when we try to simplify this, this is the equation for lift that we get. Lift is nothing but 2 by v v infinity times s. This is the characteristic length, which is usually the span length or called integral along the span gamma of y dy, because gamma is varying along the entire span. It is constant along the vortex filament, but it is varying along the span. And we can calculate drag easily from this figure. We can see that if I try to represent lift by this vector, and this small angle of attack alpha I causes a small drag, and this di is nothing but the induced drag that we wanted to derive so long. So we can say that from this figure we can say that di is nothing but li times sine alpha a. We take this span-wise quantity, so di prime is li prime times sine alpha a, and we can see that alpha is very small because the downwash is very small compared to the free stream velocity. And we can say that di prime is nothing but li prime times alpha a, and we have the expression for alpha a, and we also have the expression for Li prime, and that from that we can say that our total induced drag is nothing but the integral of the span-wise integration of my lift per unit span times my induced angle of attack. And I can say my drag coefficient, like induced drag coefficient, is nothing but my total induced drag over my dynamic pressure Q infinity times characteristic length S, which is nothing but this integral divided by V infinity times S. So that ends the discussion of induced drag, the quantitative discussion. So, so this is a problem. So what are the normal precautions that people do are, if this is from a flight manual. So normally people avoid following an aircraft at an altitude which is within 1,000 feet, because these vortices tend to disturb the flow fields. Vortices from the plane in the front tends to disturb the flow fields around the plane in the back. If there is a plane here, it gets disturbed, and it might experience some weird problems. And also, while taking off in the runway, there is a certain distance, a certain altitude that is maintained before an aircraft touchdowns or before an aircraft take, because it creates turbulence in its back. And how is this induced drag reduced? So induced drag is reduced by having a smaller chord length and a longer wingspan, because we have seen that the induced drag coefficient is inversely proportional to the characteristic length. So if I make a longer wingspan, this drag coefficient will become smaller. And also people use a trick by making by having wing tips at the end of the wing, because these wing tips tend to reduce this drag, because they don't easily allow the forces in the top to come to the forces in the, the flow in the bottom to come to the top, because now the flow has to go over a much larger distance, and it is fairly reduced. And these are the type of winglets. This is a figure that is given by NASA, that different winglets have different implications and they are used for different purposes. And this is a figure that a commercial aviation airliner is provided. And using winglets have resulted in 5% savings in fuel burn, and it also has reduced 5% CO2 emissions, because the amount of power that we extract from the engine is reduced, and which also directly implicates to reduction and consumption of fuel. So that's all about induced drag, and thank you for listening.